せ者なんかじゃない。やるか。はい。死ななきゃ安い。主にあだなす敵は。
Episode 1. Amidst a battle is a young whippersnapper named Saranmaru, who despite his young age is recognized by his companions. While his clan gets burned to the ground, others watch idly as a sword becomes encased in flames, revealing a hidden power. It is then revealed this is all a dream when a blue-haired man asks the other guy if he had that bad dream again. While they sit around doing jack, a few other shady-looking figures fight against a group of skeletons. One of these people fighting the skeletons is a black-haired boy who looks like a weakling. If you assume this, however, you would be wrong, for he is an absolute demon with a sword. He doesn't even need to lift a hand because he trusts his friends that much. Finally, after he gets tired of sitting around, watching the others get defeated, he decides to step up and emerge into battle. Meanwhile, a pretty blonde boy struggles against one of these skeletons, causing him to be saved by some bulky man. He calls the boy worthless, asking why he is even in battle if he can't defeat a single skeleton. While he talks, the black-haired boy emerges again, telling them to stop slacking off. After they clean things up here, they go back to their home to wash up together, with each of them doing the same morning routine. It seems as if they are robots or something. They then all go to greet another handsome black-haired man, making me lose track of who is even important or not. With 30 people who look like main characters, they all act like the protagonist, doing their own things. During this, the protagonist finally emerges, being welcomed by another generic-looking character. He tells them he will vow his allegiance to them, hoping to make a name for himself in this world of swords. On the other hand, the pink-haired man who had the bad dream talks with his ally about this dream, wondering if it will one day come true. His friend asks him if he has any emotions surrounding the dream, wondering if it is hurting him at all. The pink-haired man tells him he doesn't really care about it at all, so Yagen, the nerdy-looking guy, offers him some Xanax to sleep better. He accepts, but is soon interrupted when some whippersnappers come looking for the main character. They ask where he is, hoping to make friends with the newcomer, but are left with no information. While this occurs, some other characters engage in battle, including the blonde guy. He struggles in battle at first, but eventually senses where his opponent is striking from, launching his sword out of his hand. Although he got this advantage, his sword was knocked out as well, causing the duel to be a draw. They then ask the referee if he learned anything until the pink-haired man, Souza, emerges. They ask him if he wants to fight alongside them, but he refuses, hoping to just mope around all day. He tells the group that he is feeling lazy today, so he plans on just sitting around. While they talk, another character emerges, completely wasted, lowering the tension. The blonde guy tries to stop him from sitting on the mat, but soon realizes this is the newcomer. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is your favorite sword fight in all of anime? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now, back to the recap. Acting like a drunken fool, the newcomer introduces himself as Fudu, an alcoholic. They ask him where he got the drink from, to which he explains he stole it. This stuns them, wondering how he can be so laid back after entering a new world. Fudu then walks up on Souza, asking him if he has met him before. He tells him he feels like he has fought against him before, asking if he wants to clash swords again. Souza denies his request, but Fudu eventually reveals his intentions, claiming to be loved by someone named Lord Nobunaga like he is. As they talk, another sexy dude walks up on them, asking Fudu why he has been drinking. Fudu explains that he was catching up with an old friend, claiming that he knows Souza from his past life. He then asks if there are any other people loved by the Nobunaga sword, revealing there is. He asks to see them, but he is stopped when he is told to follow Souza around the area. With Souza being announced as his guard, the blonde guy decides to join alongside them, introducing himself as Yaman Bagiri. Once Fudu hears this, he makes fun of him, asking why his name sounds so stupid. After he says this, Souza stops him from teasing Yaman Bagiri any further, telling him to follow him. They then begin walking through the estate, where Yaman Bagiri informs Fudu of what is going on in this world. With it being 2205 AD, there are tons of monsters wandering the world, causing people like himself to fight them. As they walk around the estate, Fudu asks who all these random people are, to which he learns they are also people summoned into this world like himself. With every person doing their own slave work, everything gets done around the estate. Fudu realizes that in this world he has a much stronger body than usual, seeing the various people doing jobs without break. With there being everything you could imagine to do, there are even games to waste the day away. Fudu this and tries to join, but is guided elsewhere, eventually finding some bum lying on a roof. He tells them that although he is a useless sword, he will still try his hardest. Fudu shares his past, informing them his past master gave him his love, but he couldn't repay it. While they talk, more random people emerge, causing Fudu to make a ruckus introducing himself. One of these men in the group happens to also be from this Nobunaga family, so Fudu tries to talk with him. After asking how he is doing, the guy walks away, completely ignoring Fudu. As the day goes on, people eventually finish up their duties for the day. Souza in particular sits around, talking with the nerdy guy about what power Fudo could have. With Nobunaga being one of the strongest swords masters in all of history, they wonder why Fudo would claim to be useless in battle. As they talk, Souza reveals that he ended up dying in battle alongside Nobunaga until he was tattooed by the Demon King. He shares that because of this, he feels like a caged bird, unable to ever use his real power. Meanwhile, Yaman Bagiri is seen sitting alone in a room, wondering what kind of power Fudu holds. As he meditates, he is interrupted by another random person telling him the master is expecting him. He then follows him and meets with the master, revealing this so-called master is just a small doll, with the man beside it doing all the talking. He tells Yaman Bagiri that the master has a big job with him. He orders Yaman Bagiri to go fight in their stead, hoping to expand their influence. Yaman Bagiri tries to reject the request, claiming he is useless, but the man beside the master knows better. He tells Yaman Bagiri he isn't some useless character and that he needs to face his fears. Finally, the master speaks, telling Yaman Bagiri he needs to obey his orders even if he considers himself weak. Episode 2. The next morning, Fudu gets straight to work, heading to the fields to farm some crops. As he farms, Souza watches over him, wondering how he can be so high-spirited. He then heads into where they cook these ingredients, revealing Fudu has never cooked before. While he cooks in the kitchen, Yaman Bagiri and some others decide to train out in an open field. That is until he is approached by a man named Hasebe, telling him the master is calling for him. He tells him that he is going to become an attendant, whatever that is, but Yaman Bagiri shows discomfort. He asks him if he is really able to become one, thinking he is too weak to be an attendant. The others alongside him encourage him, telling Yaman Bagiri if anyone's got what it takes them, he does. Now, with this out of the way, the blue-haired man invites Hasebe to join him in his training, leaving Yaman Bagiri alone. Meanwhile, Fudu eats the food he cooked up, commenting that it is good despite it being made by his own hands. Later that night, we transition to see the bum from earlier being approached by a white-haired man. He asks the bum what he is doing in his spot, showing he comes here often. He tells the bum that he is surprised to see him here, but as he starts talking, the bum decides to leave. Souza, on the other hand, has that same dream, watching as his old estate gets burned before his eyes. This time, rather than just seeing the dream, he experiences it firsthand, forcing him to wake up in a panic. The following day, he goes to eat, but still feels strange from that dream last night. Others notice this and ask if he is all right, but he continues to not tell us anything. Eventually, the nerd guy walks up and asks Souza if he needs help with anything. His emergence is followed by another new character, asking if he can help. He tells Souza that although he is having a bad dream, he now has the chance to make a new life, hopefully for the better. As they talk, some filthy rascal cat walks up on them, interrupting their conversation. Another person walks up on them as well, calling the blue-haired man to get ready for the mission. While all this happens, Fudu watches from the sideline, drinking in the process. He learns of the mission they are going on, and offers to lend his help. Yaman Bagiri stops him, however, telling him this isn't some child's play. He informs him that they fight against the strongest of monsters in the world, using their swords to defeat them. For some reason, one of them has a gun, but that's besides the point. He continues explaining, showing every one of the random characters have their own skill set. With them having the duty to defend history, he says this job is much too large for the likes of him just yet. Fudu then goes and sits around depressed for the night until the estate's baddie walks up on him, introducing herself as Midar. She asks if he is sad for getting scolded by Yaman Bagiri, showing she has ears in all places. While he mopes around in a depressed mood, the others arrive at the battlefield, ready to save history. With their enemy being the same generic skeleton monsters in every site, they set their sights on one day finally ridding the world of chaos. Two of the swordsmen talk amongst each other until one of them shows his fear, trying to back out of the fight. During this, the others start their own battles, each hoping to make a name for themselves. After some time, they all finish up their battles, hoping nobody gets hurt. To their surprise, however, the smallest of the group gets fatally wounded, forcing them to put a halt to their battle. They head back to put the small child, Sayo, in the infirmary, hoping he will recover hastily. While Sayo lays idly in bed, the light blue-haired man finally explains what ended up happening. He tells us that when he was walking around the castle, he ended up getting distracted, forcing Sayo to step in and save him. As a result of this, Sayo ended up getting injured, making him feel as if it was his fault. He tries to put the blame on himself, but the others stop him, informing him it's all of their faults for exposing Sayo to battle. Later that night, while watching over Sayo, Souza overhears him begging for revenge. This pains the light blue-haired man, so he pats the worthless kid on the head, hoping he will soon get better. He then explains why Sayo is asking for revenge, telling Souza in his past life he was killed. This pains Souza's heart, so he tells his friend that he will try his best for him, despite him being completely useless thus far. The following day, some of the leaders of the group decide to talk together about important matters, but it's hard when some of them are drinking. Yaman Bagiri asks them to be serious while wearing his white hood, acting all suspicious. Finally, they start talking about their future plans, acting like soon the monsters will break free and attack them directly. With nobody able to decide on a plan, they eventually move on to asking Yaman Bagiri what he wants to do. He tells them that they should send various teams to investigate the area first, but as he talks, he is interrupted. Another character walks in, presenting food to the group, getting them off task yet again. They compliment his cooking, ignoring Yaman Bagiri's plan to find a solution. With Hasebe protesting their antics, he tries to get everybody to get back on topic. Before he does, however, he goes to the door and reveals that Fudu has been hiding behind it this whole time. Still with the drink in his hand, he begins expressing his drunken feelings to the group, begging them to let him fight with them. He tells them he has no clue what's going on, making it one of the only relatable things we have with him. He begins yapping about his past, telling them because he failed his past master he wants to try his hardest in this life. Once they hear this, Hasebe decides to test his strengths to see if he truly is capable of helping them. Once he says this, he leaves the room, causing Fudu to become enraged for some reason. He spends the rest of his night as usual, drinking until Yaman Bagiri walks up on him. He asks him to take this task seriously, still wearing his hood for some reason. Fudu then asks him to explain what's going on, but before he can, the main guy, Mikazuki, emerges, telling Fudu he will spill it out to him. He tells him their master called upon them to save history, causing Fudu to ask what if he doesn't follow them. Mikazuki then whips out his sword and shows he doesn't have a choice in the matter, ordering him to live his life for his new master. He tells him although he will be cut down if he retaliates, he has no intentions to do so unless he truly disobeys their master. Episode 3. Following these events, they set out to hopefully subdue the monsters that are within the world. As they go along their adventure, they make sure to take breaks to enjoy the new life that their master has given them. Later that week, Hasebe and Souza engage in a duel to see as their skills have gotten any worse over time. With both sides having their own strengths and being strong in their own regard, it's hard to see who will win. The others tells Hasebe to calm down, reminding him it's only a friendly duel. He lets his emotions take control of him, however, drawing his sword at Souza again. He reveals that because Fodo didn't acknowledge him as a fellow companion, he has a lot of pent-up anger. He tries to take this out on Souza, but ultimately realizes he is stepping out of line, so he leaves. After this happens, he goes to regain his thoughts, remembering the time when he was alongside Nobunaga. With him originally being presented as one of the strongest swords within their land, he was regarded as one of the strongest. That was until the fated day when he ended up losing his master by neglecting his duties. The next morning, Fudu starts back up again in his drinking, speaking blasphemy to the others. He shares his drunken thoughts to the others, informing them of all of his feats in his past life. He talks about how he would help Nobunaga in his life to the others, hoping to gain some merit. They tell him to stop flexing, causing him to become a bit saddened. Hasebe then approaches, asking what they are talking about. Before anyone can speak, Fudu says hello to him, but this only angers him. He asks Fudu if he is morning drinking again, calling him a scumbag in the process. With Fudu being tipsy, he doesn't care about these insults, showing he is mature even when drinking. Hasebe tells him that he needs to forget about his past master, his new master being the only one important. Fudo counters this by claiming Nobunaga is still his master, even if he serves a new one. This causes Hasebe to call Nobunaga a weakling, blaming his death on his own weaknesses. As a result of this, Fudo grabs his collar, claiming he should never insult his previous master. He tells the others that Nobunaga showed him love when he was alive, claiming he must have been nice to him as well. Even with his claims, Hasebe denies it, causing the two to go back and forth arguing. While they argue, Suzuha begins to feel uneasy, eventually being brought to tears from the thought of his past master. He wonders why he has such an attachment to Nobunaga, hiding his true feelings from the others. Yamanbagiri then emerges still in his strange getup, asking the others what is going on. Before he gets an answer, everyone disperse, leaving him in his own thoughts. Fudo goes to talk with him, asking why he is so emotional about Nobunaga. The light blue-haired man, Kusetsu, then enters and tells Suza that he should rely on others from time to time. He asks him if he can help him with his task, recognizing his pale eyes. Hasebe, on the other hand, goes to meet with the nerdy guy to talk about his past. He tells him that Nobunaga treated him well, but ended up selling him off and neglecting him. He reveals that he feels abandoned by Nobunaga and feels like he is haunting him even in his grave. Others talk about the situation but are still unsure of how Nobunaga truly acted during his life. Although he is regarded as one of the strongest and most influential people in history, his personality is still hidden. One thing is sure, one of his strongest swords was in possession of Hasebe at one time, making them wonder why he is so angry at him. With everyone having their own thoughts about the matter, they are ultimately unable to do anything, not knowing how to help either side. Later that day, Suza is seen sweeping up one of the barns until he is given advice by Kosetsu. He tells him they should go for a ride to talk everything out, hoping to mediate the tension. While this happens, some of the others decide to train their muscles, knowing they must always be ready for battle. With each one trying to outdo the other, it leads to a competition amongst the swordsmen. Yamanbagiri, on the other hand, leisurely does his training, still in his stupid hood. His friend asks him why he always wears the hood, but he refuses to explain himself. He instead diverts the conversation to gossip about Fudo and Hasebe. With both of them originally being Nobunaga's sword, he blames himself for getting them off on the wrong footing. They tell him that he shouldn't feel bad about it all, reminding him he has nothing to do with it. Yamanbagiri then tells them that if they don't get along with them, he fears they will go down the same path in the past. Previously, Yamanbagiri had led a squadron but ended up losing half of his companions because of internal disputes within the battle. He blamed his friends' deaths on himself, being unable to accept his own defeat. Although he was a crybaby during this battle, he ended up making it out alive, having to bear with the pain of losing his companions. He tells them he resigned as an attendant before because he felt it was his fault they died. Although he is all mopey, his friends still urge him to continue forward, claiming he is stronger than any of them. As they talk, more people begin to pop up, all reminding Yamanbagiri of his feats. This cheers him up a bit, finally deciding to accept his title as one of the master's attendants. Mikazuki then emerges, telling Yamanbagiri that the master's decision is always right, urging him to get over his pent-up feelings. As he talks, more and more people begin to pop up, making it seem like a small get-together. While this occurs, Suza has his ride alongside Kusetsu, feeling a bit better from it. He thanks Kusetsu for taking him on this, allowing him to remember how beautiful this world is. Following this, everyone begins to gather within the dojo, waiting to hear an announcement. Yamanbagiri then walks up to the stage and tells the others that he is done being a crybaby, finally accepting his title as an attendant. As his first order, he tells everyone they will have a small training session. They then all head into a forest, and instead of a friendly sparring match, they fight against each other with real swords, hoping to hone their skills. Episode 4. With Yamanbagiri dividing them into 4 teams, each engaging against their own opponent, he hopes some real combat experience will hone their skills. He explains that by doing this training, they will have something to look for, finally knowing who is the strongest amongst them. He explains that Team 1 includes people like Suza and Hasebe along with Fudo. In Team 2, there is Mikazuki, Sayo, and some other randoms. Team 3 consists fully of randoms, except for Yamabushi, the strongest of the swordsmen in terms of raw strength. Team 4 has only randoms in it, making them seem like the weakest of the group. After hearing all of this, Hasebe protests, claiming there is no way he can fight alongside the others. Mikazuki then asks if he plans on going against the master's orders, the teams being decided by him. Upon hearing this, Hasebe backs down, still refusing to accept Fudo. Some of the others talk later that night, wondering how Yaman Bagiri managed to become an attendant again. The following morning, the training session finally begins, causing all of the lower-level swordsmen to watch idly. With a couple of randoms as the commentators, the audience wonders if they are worthy of being the announcers. They wonder who to root for, wishing the best for everyone contending. A fox then emerges and puts up a screen of the teams, showing they have technology like television in this world. While this occurs, Yaman Bagiri explains the rules to the others, hoping to have a fair match between them all. Finally, without further ado, the competition begins, causing the teams to start warming up. Meanwhile, Hasebi is still mad at Fudo, telling him not to hold him back. Someone then sounds a horn, initiating the battle, causing Yaman Bagiri to tell Hasebe and Fudao to stop arguing. As the first battle, we have two young-looking randoms, both displaying amazing sword skills. With the forest having tons of cover, this challenge ends up being a competition of speed. While they fight, some others fight, showing they are pumped up for this event. Each side discusses their plans before engaging in battle until the battle begins. The commentators tell the audience with each of them having their own advantages. It's too early to know who will win. While they battle, the bum, who is always lying around on the roof, gets engaged by a feminine-looking man. He is pushed back, showing that he shouldn't neglect his training. He realizes if he does bad, he will have harsher training, so he begins going all out, hoping to show them his strength. On the battlefield, more fights begin to arise with tons of people, hoping to prove their strengths. One of the fights includes a man who somehow has a gun. He tries to shoot his opponent, but it shows that even guns aren't fast enough to deal any damage. In another part of the forest, two pink-haired men engage in battle, stunning the audience. Then suddenly, the cameras begin to shut off, making the audience wonder what's going on. Yaman Bagiri, on the other hand, runs around until he eventually stumbles upon Mikazuki. He thinks they will be on friendly terms, but Mikazuki strikes him, showing he has no intent of sitting idly. Sayo, on the other hand, fights against his own opponent, him being unsure if he can fight his friend. He tells him that he will only fight for revenge, causing the white-haired man to antagonize him. This angers him, so he rushes into battle, but is quickly pushed back. This forces his companion to enter the battle, making it a 2v2. On another side of the forest, Hasebe encounters Souza, but they don't engage in battle, with both sides being on the same team. Like usual, Souza begins talking about Nobunaga, but thankfully they are interrupted. Souza begins his battle, causing Hasebe to try and interrupt it. Before he can, however, another emerges, stopping him and making it a 2v2. Two others notice this, so they join in on the fight, deciding to make it an uneven 4v2. Hasebe doesn't falter, however, proving even against two he can hold his own. After some sparring, they eventually stop fighting and start complementing each other's skills. Yaman Bagiri, on the other hand, is still in battle against Mikazuki, him not being able to land a single blow. As they fight, the two pink-haired men emerge, telling Yaman Bagiri they plan on teaming up against him. They invite Mikazuki to join their team as well, but he decides to team up with Yaman Bagiri. With this being a free-for-all, any rules go, meaning even enemies can team up. While this occurs, Hasebe continues fighting until his battle is interrupted by the drunk Fudo. He tells them that he plans on fighting as well, hoping to prove Nobunaga was the greatest fighter. Once he says this, Hasebe gets angry, so he grabs his collar and starts arguing again. He tells Fudao to forget about Nobunaga again, showing he has no plans on compromising his thoughts. This eventually leads to the two pushing each other back until Souza faints for some reason. Because of this, they stop the training, revealing it was a failure. This makes Yaman Bagiri feel like a failure, so he walks away from the others, hoping to cry off his emotions. He decides to head to a pond within the estate to cry, but is stopped when Mikazuki approaches him with a drink. He tells him to drink his sorrows away with hopes that he will one day take off his stupid hood. This drink opens Yaman Bagiri's emotions up, him explaining that he feels bad about the training. He wishes to just help the others, but is unable to do even that. Mikazuki then tells him to relax, urging him to look up at the moon. He tells him that the moon is beautiful, just like his emotions, informing him that he needs to get control of himself. He tells him that if the moon were to ever become a sword, then it would be the most beautiful thing in the world. This makes Yaman Bagiri feel more relaxed, so he relies on Mikazuki, asking him how he can become a better attendant. Mikazuki tells him that success lies in following the master's orders, informing him nothing else matters. The following day, he heads back to the dojo and decides he will prove his strength to the master rather than try stupid training. He tells him he will go and put the end to an ongoing battle, hoping some of the others will accompany him. He then calls for Fudu and some others, explaining that they will go to a temple to deal with the monsters. Episode 5. Walking around aimlessly is a young man named Ranmaru, a young samurai. He gets interrupted by an older feller, asking what he is doing slacking off. He tells him that he isn't slacking off, but rather presenting a sword to his lord. Upon inspecting it, the man who confronted him gets filled with impure thoughts, wondering if he should steal the sword. He ends up holding himself back, but shows that he isn't one to mess around with. He tells Ranmaru that the sword he is transporting is worth a nation, urging him to take care of it. This makes him feel like a weakling, telling the others that the Lord trusted him with this sword. The man then informs him that he needs to be more cautious regardless, informing him it's likely to be stolen if not hidden away. He pays this no mind, but little does he know there are monsters close by, ready to snatch the sword at a moment's notice. Back in the present, we see Yaman Bagiri, alongside Mikazuki, discussing his plans to change history. It is revealed they are back in the past before Nobunaga died, specifically one day before he died. There are various theories of how he died, but one thing is for sure, he died during the tea party they are planning on raiding. Hasebi, on the other hand, stands on top of a roof waiting to strike. He believes that it will be an easy job, showing he is overconfident in his skills. Meanwhile, while everyone else is acting cautiously, Fudo walks around town alongside Souza, showing no interest in his mission. He asks Souza what his deal with Nobunaga is, still not understanding why he gets so emotional about it. He then asks if he feels nostalgic being in this area, both of them previously being under Nobunaga's steed. Eventually, he asks him if he can go to meet with Nobunaga to see if he can talk to him one last time. Souza, however, has no intentions of doing so, reminding him they are currently on a mission. He tells Fudo to focus on their mission, but as he says this, Fudo is seen rushing off. While this happens, the others stand around waiting for them to meet back up, wondering why it is taking them so long. Yaman Bagiri decides to change their plans with his companions nowhere to be seen. While they argue together, Souza finally catches up to Fudo, informing him this is no time to play around. Fudo tries to tell him that he just wanted to get a peek at him to see his master one last time. Souza then reminds him of their task, telling him they are here to fix the past. This makes Fudo angry, telling him he was lucky to see Nobunaga to his dying breath. He tells him he wasn't there when Nobunaga died, so he just wants to see him again. Souza then informs him that although he was there, he was in no position to help him. He tells Fudo that he felt like a captured bird, being used for whatever plans Nobunaga intended. Fudo tries to assure him that Nobunaga loved him, even if he felt trapped, giving him one of the strongest swords in history. While he talks, some monsters emerge behind them, forcing Souza to draw his sword. Fudo follows suit and begins fighting, but he gets knocked back instantly. As he sits on the ground, Hasebe emerges and takes pity on Fudo, telling him to watch and learn. He then begins cutting down the monsters and the others join him, making the fight shift. Fudo, on the contrary, gets angry for having to be defended too. He rushes off closer to Nobunaga's estate until he is stopped yet again by some monsters. They push him back and he eventually is forced to be saved by Yagen. With him being saved once again by a companion, he wonders if he should really be here. As time goes, Ranmaru eventually emerges with his famed sword in hand. He faces off against HTE monsters, showing he has no intentions of backing down. After showing his strength, the monsters run off and the others arrive just in time to miss the entire fight. Fudo, on the other hand, seems to know this man from his previous life. He hugs Ranmaru and tells him he has missed him. Ranmaru, not knowing who he is, he tells him that he used to serve under him, but before he can explain himself, Yagen interrupts him. He takes him elsewhere, making sure that he isn't able to talk with him. Ranmaru then notices one of the swordsman's injuries, so he offers some help. He asks him if he can treat his wound, informing him he has all of the facilities to tend to him. With Ranmaru insisting on helping, he is forced to comply, leading them within his manor. Yaman Bagiri, on the other hand, walks around still looking for the others, unknowing to what's been going down. As he speaks, he suddenly notices a man named Yasuke walking around, calling him one of Nobunaga's retainers. He reveals that during his first mission where he lost some companions, the one behind the attacks was Yasuke. With this in mind, they consider him for being responsible for Nobunaga's death, but as they talk, he approaches them. He asks Yaman Bagiri why he is glaring at him with such a stupid hood on, but he is unable to answer. He holds his anger within and lets Mikazuki do the talking for him. This clears up the misunderstanding and he walks away, leaving the two to continue their search. Meanwhile, within Ranmaru's estate, he is seen treating all of the wounds Fudo's party may have. Ranmaru then tells them that if they ever need anything just to call out to him, informing them he would never leave someone hurt. As he continues to explain himself, Fudo gets reminded of his past, previously being under Ranmaru. He shares with the others that another reason he helped them was because of nostalgia. He tells them he felt as if he had met them before, reminding him of one of his fellow swordsmen. He explains that it was because of his love for the Lord, even though Hasabi hasn't said anything in regard to Nobunaga. Fudo then tries to talk with him some more, but is stopped once again by the others. He's forced to just say his thanks to him, leaving without getting to really talk it out with him. Before they leave, however, Suza asks him a question, wondering how he feels about Nobunaga. As usual, before we get any answers, someone pulls them away, leaving Ranmaru to wonder who these people truly are. Later that night, they walk around, hoping to meet back up with the others, but are unsure where they even are. One thing is clear, however. They think that Ranmaru is a vital part in Nobunaga's death. After some looking around, Yamanbagiri eventually finds the others, causing Fudo to express himself, apologizes for running off, and calls himself useless, having got beat around by all the monsters. Yamanbagiri tells him that he also feels like a useless sword, telling him of his past. He tells him that he was originally a top retainer to his master, but never fulfilled his purpose in life. He calls himself a fake, telling Fudo that he will make up for his past life's uselessness. As this happens, Ranmaru gets approached by some monsters, hoping to take his sword away. With too many monsters before him, he ends up getting taken over and becomes one with them. Although he tried to save himself, he ended up getting bombarded by these monsters, taking over his body entirely. Now, with one of the most recognizable samurai of the time who holds one of Nobunaga's strongest swords, there is only pain to come. Later that day, Ranmaru approaches his boss nonchalantly, making us wonder what they are talking about. As they talk, they waste the screen time, talking about their feelings and flowers. With no real explanation of these characters, it makes you question why they are even in the series. The older gentleman then sees a flower fall, and for some reason it makes him think that something bad is going to happen. Now in the present, he marches towards Nobunaga, revealing he is behind the attacks on him. The others, on the contrary, sit around doing absolutely nothing, talking about the sky. With animation being the only thing going for this anime, it makes sense they would show the landscapes. With so many random characters, I even forgot which ones are important and which aren't. As they talk, one of the characters talks about how they all have their backstories, saying nobody here got here easily. He talks about how if they don't face their past one day, then it will continue to haunt them, referring to Hasebe and the other Nobunaga samurai. Meanwhile, in the past, Suza looks over a hill, awaiting his attack on the capital. As he does this, he decides to get in closer to meet with the others and discuss their plans. Now, with Nobunaga being surrounded, the group gets ready to fight for the sake of Nobunaga. Before they enter, they wonder why they are saving in the first place, but they don't answer the question, saying it's the master's orders. Although they may not care, it would surely help understand the series more if they would just explain it. Suza seems to hear this, so he starts rambling on about some random thing from his past as usual. He talks about how hard it was for him to leave Nobunaga and see him defeated. Yagen, on the other hand, doesn't seem to care, telling them he would rather just get the job done and head home already. They also talk about the leader of the group fighting Nobunaga, saying there is no real motive behind their attacks. With each person thinking their own thing, it must have been jealousy driving their actions. Fudo, on the other hand, just wants to get into battle already, thinking he can stop the army himself. Yamanbagiri notices this and tells him that he needs to get stronger, informing him he has no chance against their army. This makes Fudo encouraged to get stronger, so he tells the others he won't be a useless sword this time. The others then approach them, and they are all set to fight in Nobunaga's defense. Before the fight, the commander thinks of his past and all of his memories alongside Nobunaga. Although it pains him to fight, he has some kind of deeper meaning behind it all. He then gives the command, and Nobunaga's palace gets bombarded by soldiers, killing all inside. Once the others notice this, it's already too late, causing them to enter a panic. Somehow, however, when the samurai enter the room, they are surrounded by the monsters, making you wonder if Nobunaga has control over them. Fudo sees all of this, so he tries to run in and help, but he is stopped. They tell him they can't change history unless they put their hearts into it, making Fudo wonder why they are there in the first place. He protests their decision to stand by, and this ends up causing Hasebe to explain it to him. He reminds him of Nobunaga's death, and informs him that they are here to make sure nothing goes wrong. Yamanbagiri then tries to enter the fight as well, causing the others to get pumped up. They reveal that their mission is to end Nobunaga's life here, making you wonder why they even went back in the past if it happens anyways. As the fight goes on, Ranmaru begins fighting against the invaders, taking them out with ease. Once he gets some free time, he chats it up with Yasuke, acting just as confused as we are. He also wonders what these mysterious monsters fighting for him are. As he sees their emergence, His eyes glow red, making him wonder why they are helping him. The samurai call him a demon king, but know even if that's the case, they can overpower Ranmaru. He then dashes towards Ranmaru, and he gets stabbed as if he thought the samurai would just look at him. After he gets stabbed, he screams out in agony, deflecting the samurai back. This makes him stunned, so he slashes at Ranmaru again, but nothing ends up happening. Ranmaru tanks all of the hits and throws the samurai back, only thinking about saving Nobunaga. On the other hand, Yagen and the others defeat the monsters for the samurai's stead, opening the path. As they explore in search of Nobunaga, they find various people recognizable from their history books. Fudo, on the contrary, is seen running around the palace screaming out for Nobunaga. As he searches, he eventually finds Ranmaru surrounded by two others. He tries to help him, but Ranmaru instantly gets stabbed, making him think his life is over. Then, just as fast as they struck him, he counters, defeating all of the opposers. This causes Ranmaru to enter his true form, becoming one with the demon inside of him. This makes Fudo feel bad for him, so he runs after him, but ends up getting stopped by Souza. Souza tells him that Ranmaru is already dead, so this entity before them is a fake. As they talk, Ranmaru summons in more enemies, ordering them to fight the group. Although they have the advantage in numbers, Fudo decides to take on the boss monster. As you can expect, however, he gets thrown around like a pup, causing Fudo to beg for forgiveness. He tells Ranmaru he is friends with him, both sharing a common lord. Ranmaru completely ignores him, however, and throws him onto a wall. Finally, after all this commotion, the others arrive at the scene, protecting the useless Fudo like usual. With nobody fighting him now, Fudo decides to make an even bigger ruckus, running after Ranmaru. Little does he know, Ranmaru is out fighting the various monsters, eventually finding Mitsuhide, the boss. Ranmaru asks why he started this revelation, but he doesn't explain. He tells Ranmaru that Nobunaga's time is long overdue, showing he has no real reason for this invasion. He then orders Ranmaru to move out of his way, revealing he was previously the one to kill Nobunaga. He asks Ranmaru why he shows such loyalty to Nobunaga, him being some worthless scumbag. This angers Ranmaru, so he dashes towards them, but Fudo jumps in between, sacrificing himself. After he gets thrown around like usual, Souza emerges as the hero. He stops the attack and tells Ranmaru he needs to die like in the history books. With the entire castle in chaos, and people who were previously friends fighting for their lives, some wonder what is going on, while others are sure that this is the right decision. In particular, Yamabargiri knows what's going on, so he approaches the man who previously killed his companions. He looks down on him with spite, remembering the time when he lost it all because of his actions. Despite this, he holds back his anger and decides to treat Yasuke as if he was just a normal person caught in the crossfire. He urges him to leave as soon as he can, knowing things will take a turn for the worse if he gets possessed during this moment again, like last time. As all of this happens, Ranmaru continues going on a rampage, this time asking Souza why he is betraying him. He claims that he knows him somehow, calling him a traitor in the process. They continue fighting until Ranmaru eventually gets the upper hand, slicing into the two. Somehow they stop the incoming attack, but tell the old geezer that he needs to run away, claiming they will handle things. Then as he talks, Souza gets thrown back, forcing the others to enter the battle to help him. They tell Ranmaru that he should already be dead, claiming that he isn't the same Ranmaru that they had seen before. Upon hearing this, now monster like Ranmaru gets enraged, calling for backup to help him with the battle. This doesn't faze the group, however, slicing through all of the various demon monsters in their way. Whether it's a large monster or small one, nothing stands a chance against the samurai boys' attacks. Even Fudo, the usually trash swordsman, ends up assisting in battle, blocking an incoming attack. Per usual, however, he gets thrown around like a baby, forcing the real samurai to enter the battle. After this happens, Ranmaru runs away, sending his monsters to deal with the others, but Fudo doesn't let him escape. He chases after him, hoping to talk with him one last time, while the old geezer searches the castle for Nobunaga. With it being his mission to kill him, he risks his life transversing the flames, with hopes of killing him. Meanwhile, Ranmaru continues venturing the castle by himself, hoping to find Nobunaga one last time. Right before he finds him, Fudo stops him in his path, asking him to talk with him. This only angers Ranmaru even more, wondering why this stupid kid has to continue to get in their way. Once he says this, Ranmaru remembers the time when Fudo spoke with him, presenting him with the famous sword that was supposed to be held by Nobunaga. This shows how deep of a bond the two had, with Fudo being brought to tears by just the thought of seeing Ranmaru die. He tells him that they have fought together through their entire lives, so there is no way he can see him die here. As he tries to convince Ranmaru to come back to his senses, his wounds begin to show their damage. Ranmaru falls to his knees and begins gasping for air, making Fudu think he needs his help. He simply knocks him back like usual, however, showing he is useless at just about everything. Ranmaru then lies on the ground and somehow regains his senses enough to apologize to Fudu. He tells him that he helped him throughout his life by presenting him with the famous sword, allowing him to rise to the position he is today. With his final breaths, Ranmaru remembers all of HT times when his companions helped him, including Fudu. He tells this to Fudu that he feels useless for being unable to do anything despite the castle being invaded. He asks Fudu to kill him already, claiming that he knows that's the real reason he is here. Despite hearing this, Fudu starts screaming out that he can't, so Ranmaru takes advantage of his blabbering to stab his chest. He then prepares to finish him off, but suddenly in the nick of time, Souza interrupts his slash. The others then emerge before him as well, and push him back, allowing Fudu to regain his senses. They ask Fudu why he has to be so trash with the sword, determining him of the many times he has had to come and save him. The group then tells Ranmaru that this is the end, claiming there is no way for them to defeat their large number of samurai. As he says this, Ranmaru exerts his power even more, encasing the entire room with a mysterious shade of dark blue. With this display of power, they wonder if they should back off, but know if they don't kill him here, fate will only repeat itself. Ranmaru then exerts this power to them and reveals a full body armor suit, making all of their previous attacks worthless. Before this happened, Ranmaru has been controlled by the slimy figure, taking full control of his body. When Ranmaru woke up after being taken over, he found himself in a weird palace with Nobunaga's head chopped off. This angered him, so he ended up letting the monster take even more control of his body. He told himself that if he could save Nobunaga, then he would do anything in his power, including offering up his own body. Now in the present, the demon has taken full control of him, allowing him to exert this powerful force. Ranmaru slashes back the two worthless swords, but the others follow this by attacking him on their own. They get a shallow hit, so Ranmaru is able to continue with his attacks, forcing them into a panic. He then targets Hasebi and ends up forcing him to scream out in agony. The others see this, so they jump on top of him, dulking another shallow wound that doesn't do any damage to the monster whatsoever. While all of this happens, Fudo stands around doing absolutely nothing, making the others wonder why he is even here. Fudo thinks they are just making things worse by fighting him, claiming everything would be better if they saved Nobunaga. He says that Ranmaru is doing everything that they were unable to do, so they shouldn't kill him. The others continue fighting against Ranmaru, completely ignoring his stupid claims by now. They tell him to stop all his yapping, but Fudo doesn't stop here. He jumps onto Souza and stops him from attacking, making him not only useless in battle, but also unable to control his emotions. With this, Hasbe tells him to stop acting like a girl, but Fudo does the exact opposite. He jumps in front of Ranmaru and tells him he is here to protect him. Ranmaru strikes in the back, showing his advances were completely useless as usual. Ranmaru then dashes towards the others to try and strike them, but with so many swords he is unable to do anything. They beat down on Ranmaru, eventually dealing a fatal wound to him. This makes Fudo angry, so he begs them to stop, but it's too late. With Souza using one of the swords that Ranmaru recognizes, he finally understands who he truly is. This attack slices off the evil on him, so he approaches Souza in an attempt to speak with him. Souza ignores him, however, instead, slicing through his chest and ending the battle. Despite all of these attacks, Ranmaru is still alive and able to speak, so he thinks back on a past memory. He remembered the first time when he spoke with Souza, wondering what he meant when he had asked what he thought of Nobunaga. Now, in the present, he realizes that his words were not some meaningless words, so he answers the question. Ranmaru shares that he loves Nobunaga a little too much, telling them he would put Nobunaga before his own family. He wishes that he could have saved him, it being his life goal to serve his master. He says now because of them he is worthless like Fudo, claiming he never wanted to be someone of so low standing. Fudo gets down on his knees after realizing how weak he is, so he begins crying for some reason. As this happens, the old geezer is seen looking around the palace till he finds some of Nobunaga's followers. He demands them to reveal his location, but they tell him they would never snitch. In turn, he slices their heads off and continues looking around until he encounters a suspicious room. With it being filled with flowers and plants, It makes it seem like they are outside when in reality they are still in the palace. He wonders how much money he spent on making this garden, thinking Nobunaga is a wicked person. While all of this goes down, Fudo continues being useless this time, declaring that he will quit their squad. He claims that he can't betray his master, so he will fight them even if it means he is sure to die. With this being said, they know he will just die, so they let him past, thinking he won't make any differences anyways. Souza then places Ranmaru down for the last time as well, and decides to join Fudo. For some reason, Heibi follows as well, making all of them throw away their past lives for some random dude that they barely know. Souza informs them that he believes he can make things right if he just speaks with Nobunaga, so he dashes to his room. As they run there, a group of monsters get in their way, showing it won't be as easy as they think to explore. Upon entering the inside garden, the old man is confused on what's going on, but sees various screens entailing fights. With each of the members fighting their own battles against different monsters, it is unsure which side will come out on top. Despite them taking tons of injuries and wishing they could just give it up, they continue to fight, not knowing what's really going on. Speaking of knowing what's really going on, that is my question. What is even their goal in fighting these monsters? While they fight the random monsters, the dark-skinned man takes on his own fight, getting himself encased in the monster's jizz. Fudo, on the other hand, continues wandering around, wishing to help Ranmaru as if he hasn't killed and attacked tons of people. For some reason, he is obsessed with Ranmaru like no other, raising the question of whether he is straight or not. Meanwhile, Souza gets slapped around by the same monsters he has been fighting his entire life. Right before he gets knocked out, Hasebe emerges before him and saves him, claiming they aren't finished exploiting him just yet. They all tell him to go ahead to help Fudo, finally recognizing that he has a bigger mission here. As this happens, Fudo finally enters the garden where he finds the old man standing idly. He readies his guard and shows him he is ready to fight. He attempts to take him out, but he barely misses, only grazing his face. As the two fight, Fudo cries about Nobunaga still, begging that he wouldn't kill him. Right before he sends in the final blow, he ends up getting it blocked by Souza. The two have a moment, and Fudo asks why he is going so far to stop him despite their relationship to Nobunaga. Fudo claims that he should be on his side, reminding him that he was one of Nobunaga's top swords. Even after hearing all of this, he doesn't change, explaining to Fudo that the historical events aren't here for them to change. For some reason, they went back to the past anyway, fighting the monsters for absolutely no reason. Right before Fudo finishes off the general, Souza stops him, promising him that he can't save Nobunaga. He claims that the final story of Nobunaga is in history books, and he is praised. If he were to stop him here, they could make Nobunaga's public image worse in the process. Upon hearing this, Fudo begins crying again like usual, asking Hasebe what he thinks of the situation. He informs him that it's his decision in the end, so he doesn't want a say in it. Once Fudo hears this, he cries some more and thinks of the short amount of time he was enslaved by the master. With him being granted some cheap sword by Ranmaru when he was in his past life, he wonders what to do. Now with him being under the new mysterious master, who is probably some random old guy, he wonders who to follow. Ultimately, he lowers his sword, realizing he is completely useless and only good at wasting screen time. Because of this realization, he drops his sword and cries even more, making me wish I was watching the recap so I could skip it. Fudo then sees Nobunaga on one of the screens where he ends up ending himself. With it being revealed that nobody killed him, but rather him ending himself, Fudo realizes just how pointless his entire storyline has been. He wonders if he was meant to be a background character for his entire life, wishing he could have done something. Now, with these events, they are transported outside of this unexplained mystery garden within the temple. As they sit around doing nothing, Hasebe tells Fudo the battle isn't over just yet. He reminds him that he has been annoying the entire series, so if he wants to get redemption, now is the time. Before he regains his spirits, the others take out the incoming monsters, doing most of the work. Once they finish flexing their skills, Hasebe steps up to the stage and also shows his skills. With a single slash, he takes out various monsters, proving his worth. Even the random kid fighter takes out some monsters, showing no remorse for such creatures. After seeing all of their displays of skills, Fudo tries to fight as well, but he misses every single strike. This worthlessness ends up inciting him to try even harder, where he ends up killing a single monster. With the others doing most of the work, Fudo thinks they have a chance. To display his skills, he takes out one more monster, bringing the total count up to 2 monsters. On the other hand, the others kill hundreds of monsters, eventually finishing them all off. With Fudo only defeating 2, he gets overconfident and tells the general to stand up. He explains that he forgives him as if he has any say in what happens to him. The general tells him that he just wanted to do this in order to take over the nation, revealing he has a bigger purpose. On top of this, he hated and loved Nobunaga at the same time, making him wonder if he should regret his decision. He tells all of this to Fudo for some reason. Eventually, Fudo becomes conflicted, so he grabs his collar and informs him that he needs to fulfill his part in history. As he talks, he almost starts crying yet again, but holds his tears back. Like history said, the temple ends up falling to the ground, thus ending this era of Nobunaga. While this happens, Souza also joins in as a crybaby, streaming tears down his face. He wonders if he regrets letting Nobunaga die, questioning if he made the right decision. In the end, he tells himself that he made the right decision, claiming that Nobunaga is now the Demon King. Following these events, they report back to the Master, who still says and does absolutely nothing to contribute to the storyline. As he explains the events, he reveals that 11 days after the battle, the old general ended up dying. With everything happening perfectly in tune to the history books, it yet again raises the question of what they were even doing. Fudo, on the contrary, spends his time back at the new base sipping ale and sweeping the dirt floor. Some others notice this and question what his deal is, wondering why he is sweeping the ground. Meanwhile, the sketchy hooded man continues to wear his hood like he is up to something, talking with the slaveholder. He asks him what he thinks of these events and how they can turn Fudo from a crybaby to a fighter. He informs him that as long as they continue doing what they are doing, he will eventually come to. He then tells the hooded man that they will be getting a new sword here soon. Upon hearing this, he looks around and wonders what he is talking about, only to notice his tea is missing. Suddenly, another background character who had too much detail being drawn appears. To add to the confusion, the random characters introduced in the start of the anime emerge acting like we know them. They talk about throwing a party, making us wonder what they have been doing this entire time. After some conversation, they ultimately decide to go get drunk, taking the sketchy hoodman with them. Later that night, when Souza is moping around, he is approached by Yagen asking what's wrong. He questions his sanity, wondering why he is always so depressed and acting like a girl. Souza tells him that he is still a bit sad about the whole Nobunaga story, despite being one of the contributing factors to causing Fudo to forget about him. Yagen explains that although he may be crying about past events, the only thing he can do is move forward. As if he didn't already know this, Souza thanks him for his advice, causing Hasebi to appear after eavesdropping. He tells Souza that there is no reason to cry, claiming it is a sign of weakness. He then asks Souza what he thought of Nobunaga after witnessing his death. Souza decides not to answer the question, thus leaving the entire plot making no sense. We then transition to all the random characters I thought wouldn't appear again meeting up with the Master. The Master tells them they have another job waiting for them soon, as if their recent trip wasn't enough. Because of their events, various people who were within the temple during their fight plan on changing history yet again. This causes them to learn that they will soon have another mission, this time being one of cleaning up any extras left around.